Hello, everyone. I'm Vinay Raman, and this is The Critics, and I am your host for the 17th episode. Today, I'm excited to discuss our topic, building self-esteem in your employees and how to get started. And we've got an expert panel who are going to share lots of nuggets of wisdom here throughout the course of the show for you. You know, we've had over 200 people that have registered for this event. To me, that's an indication that there's some interest in this topic. But first, I want to start out and tell a little bit about me and myself and the story of our company and why we started this podcast. I'm the CEO of Karma, an effectiveness company. At Karma, we use data, facts, and analytics to make companies better. We improve recruiting, retention, productivity, and profitability. In fact, we'll guarantee improvements of 10% or more in just 3 months if you use our process. So if you're tired of that old refrain, kind of just like I am, do more with less, I'm tired of hearing that. And you actually want to become better as a company and more effective as a company, that's how we support our customers. Now, I want to shift to our audience before we introduce our panelists. And I'd love to hear from our live audience. Let us know where you're connecting from in the comments section. So on the right-hand side of the screen, you should see a little comment box. And whether you're from the United States, Canada, Europe, Asia, or anywhere else in the world, go to that comment section now and tell me where you're from. We want to make this an interactive dialogue. So I want to start introducing some of our panel members, and I want to start first with Brent James. Brent is a current region manager working for Rollins Inc. He has been in the pest control industry for over 15 years. He leads teams across 4 states in the Midwest. He's also a pastor who has attained a doctoral degree in theology and has had the opportunity to preach and teach all across this country. Brent has been married to his wife, LaJenna, for over 17 years, and they share 3 children, Dahlia, Elijah, Bryant, BJ, and also a granddaughter, Kinsley. He currently resides in Lee's Summit, Missouri, a suburb city southeast of Kansas City. Brent, how are you today? Excited?
I am excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to hear some of your insights as you've done this on a large and massive scale across the country. Dan Beard, I want to introduce Dan. Dan's got 25 years of experience in technology across various industries such as digital marketing, legal, public safety, and a couple of other different industries. He's adapted several methodologies and frameworks to create best-of-breed operating systems for businesses. But what I find most exciting about Dan is his unique approach to business. He really truly believes that there's always a better way to do things and that the key to success is always having the courage to try something new. Dan, always good to see you again. How's the world looking for you today?
World's looking great, Vinay. Thanks for having me. Excited to talk about this. We're going to get into continuous improvement as part of this topic, I'm sure.
I hope so. I think that's the gift that you bring along to this conversation. And last but not least, we have Dr. Pranay Parikh. Pranay and I met through LinkedIn, through a connection on LinkedIn. He is a medical doctor, a serial entrepreneur, online course creator, and a podcast host. And he still has time for kids and family and other things as well. He had an unconventional approach and journey to medicine, which helped him learn skills to excel in entrepreneurship. He's bought over $1 billion in real estate, helped hundreds of physicians launch their own businesses, and his goal is to help launch 10,000 physician-led businesses. Most recently, he co-founded Ascent Equity Group and a nationally focused real estate investment firm. Pranay, good to have you here.
Hey, Vinay.
Today?
How's it going?
Good. Hey, Pranay, can you say that again? I wonder if we're having some audio problems.
Hey, Vinay, how's it going? Can you hear me?
Oh, good. Yeah, now I can hear you. Great.
Awesome.
Good. I do want to express a little bit of gratitude, though, before we get started. All of this stuff, the production, all the posts, all the comments, everything else that you've gotten leading up to this event was all organized by incredibly talented staff. In particular, the invites and posts came from Janine, our podcast manager, podcast producer, and today will probably flow pretty nicely because of her too. Thanks, Janine, for your support in getting this all set up and running. As well, you'll also see the insightful power of Prim, our leadership correspondent. In the chat, she'll be engaging and sharing content, summarizing key insights. So look forward to chatting with Prim in the comments. So one last thing before we get started here. and that's for the audience. I see a number of people who have commented already and told us where they're connecting from. Thank you for joining our podcast. We've got Missouri, we've got Southern Pines, we've got Nigeria, Pakistan, Atlanta, Georgia, India, all over the globe here. So this is truly a global audience that we have here. So the first question I'd like to ask the audience here is, to get us warmed up a little bit, is what are you expecting most out of this conversation? When you first saw this topic pop up on LinkedIn, what went through your mind? What emotions were you feeling when you saw this topic? I'd love to understand what it is that you're feeling, thinking when you click that join button. Please type an answer in that comment box. That said, I want to start to turn it over to the panel. Pranay, I'll start with you. Same question for you. When you heard this topic and we kind of invited you to this topic, what went through your mind? What were you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly to hear from my fellow panelists how they're going about doing this, because business is made out of employees, right? And right now, more than ever, it's so hard to get good talent. First to find good talent, and second to keep good talent. There's nothing worse than having someone that you love that is just providing so much value go to another organization. So I think as leaders, our two goals is to find good talent and to keep them happy. So excited to hear about what other people are doing to get that done.
Now, Pranay, I appreciate you saying that talent is a real challenge for, I think, a lot of companies these days, lots of organizations. I did hear a lot of crackling noise when you were speaking. I don't know if there's a connection a little loose somewhere, but the sound came through, but there was some cracking along the way. Dan, I'll turn that same question over to you. When you heard this topic, what kind of went through your mind when you were saying, "Yeah, I'd like to be part of this panel discussion"?
Well, as you know, Vinay, I work with leaders a lot. Leadership coaching is part of what I do. And this is something that I think leaders really need to understand, that they can take some actions, things they can do to help their teams get better. So my response was, yeah, great topic. Let's definitely do this. Let's get into it. That way we can discuss, strategies. If you've got somebody who's struggling, how do you deal with that? How do you have these conversations? And I think it's really important conversation. I'm just really excited that, people from around the world are able to hear this. This is great.
So I see a couple of comments in here already. Excited and was waiting to learn more from the discussion. Mindset over motivation is another one, and fascinating topic. Looking forward to everyone sharing their insight on this multi-layer topic. I will agree, it's a multi-layer topic. Brent, there's a comment about this being a multi-layer topic. I'm also kind of curious about your thoughts in terms of the invite and kind of joining.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting topic because we're now in a post-pandemic employment culture that is not the same as before. There's a lot of different types of jobs and careers people could go into, and in order to, like the other panelists said, keep and attract some talent, we've got to learn to start to build some loyalty by exuding trust in not only the process of hiring them, but keeping that good talent, and keeping them motivated, keeping them paid correctly, keeping them looking on this side of the fence. So definitely it's multi-layered, multifaceted, but it's something that we have to do in this new culture we live in.
So I'd be kind of curious from the audience. I'd love to hear, please type it into the comment box, kind of what are the nuggets that you've heard already that kind of are resonating with you? Please type that into the comments. I want to ask one more question before we really kind of get into looking at some specific instances that we can discuss around. And it's really around this topic of that understanding of your employees and kind of where they are and sort of their mindset, but also their heart set. Dan, I'll start with you first. Do you think a lot of leaders are kind of aware that space exists to understand that? Is that the challenge? Or is it that they don't know what to do once they understand it? Is that fair as a question?
I think it is. I think I understand where you're getting to. When I think about this question a lot, I think about, what is the environment like? Is the environment a safe place to experiment? Is it a safe place to have vulnerable conversations. If you don't feel safe in an environment, you can't bring up things of or items. Let's talk about your deficiencies. Let's say I'm struggling here. If you can't have that conversation, then you will quietly struggle in the corner, and then as that directly affects your self-esteem. So it's the part of it is the environment in which we operate, and so leadership has to be able to let people try, experiment, and learn. Uh, in software development, there's this idea of fail fast. That we're going to try something, we're going to learn from it. If it fails, that's fine. The goal was to learn. So I try to carry that mindset to different leadership in different industries, because it provides a space where people don't feel like they have to be perfect all the time, and that feeling of perfect can really hold people back and really affect their self-esteem. So a good leader will hopefully allow people to talk about what's going on with them and help them build up to where they can be more effective in what they do.
Brent, you manage people across multiple locations, branches, geographies. What does that question mean to you in terms of that building self-esteem in your employees? Give me some examples of how that affects your ability to be effective as a leader.
Well, it affects it if I don't take the time to know who I'm dealing with before I deal with what I have to deal with, if that makes sense. If I go into one location, even my transition from the South to the Midwest, there's a different motivation within that culture. Not saying that the people are completely different, but there's a different motivation, different type of living, different type of people, different type of upbringing that happens, that we have to take the time as leaders to understand. And you put that on top of what we went through the last 3 years, you have to understand that there is a absolutely different mindset that you have to have in building the confidence in people. You have to look at businesses going, the last couple of years, a lot of businesses going out of business. That takes away from loyalty, that takes away from self-esteem and building a career with a business, because we're not sure if that business is going to last. We have certainly changes in leadership in all of our businesses. That breeds a form of anxiety to our employees. So all those different things, when I'm leading people, I definitely have to take that under advisement. I know one of my branch managers on here, bringing him on, I had to learn how to develop a person not only for that branch, but that has the attributes that fits into the confines of the team that we have built. And so I coach him based upon not only what his talent brings to the table, but also on what the business brings to him professionally. If that makes sense.
I think it does. I see a couple comments here from Marcello. Self-esteem is the key to success and happiness in any workplace. Michael Bonolo, I hope I'm saying that right. Looking forward to hear a different point of view or new ideas on helping work with staff in multiple countries. I think that's kind of where you're talking a little bit about, Brent, kind of people in different geographies, right? And how do you create a culture of trust and empowerment in your organization? Pranay, I want to give you a chance. What's going through your mind, maybe in response to these comments or what Brent or Dan are saying?
So I loved what Brent was talking about. It's a two-way street, right? It's gone are the days where we can just take from our employees. It was never the right thing to do in the first place, but we have to, we have to provide value to our employees as well, right? So it boils down to, what do they want? A lot of times we think about incentives, right? And it's always financially focused. And a lot of times we're not able to provide raises, we're not able to provide extra benefits, but that's not always what someone wants. A lot of people are happy with their pay. Of course, they'll take more if you give it to them, but they're happy with where they are. A lot of times people want to be challenged, but challenged in a way that they're supported, kind of like we were talking about earlier with experimenting. They're experimenting, but they're not judged harshly if they don't get successful at first. So providing a place where they can grow, but not fear any type of issues that will go on if they don't make they don't do what they're supposed to do right in the first place, right? So we have to give them time to experiment, to be challenged, but also a supportive system that, if they fail or if they don't get what they're supposed to do, then it's a way that they can be still have success in what they're doing.
Yeah, I see some more comments that I think are kind of echoing some of that. Curtis Floyd, good friend. Curtis, I love what he's saying here. Says, I build confidence by having an honest conversation with my people and ask them what is important and motivates them. I tailor my coaching around those needs. Yeah, being aware, I think what I'm hearing from all of you is having this awareness of what your people need, and kind of, instead of thinking of them as a one size fits all kind of hat, which never really fits all that well, in my opinion. It's everyone is a puzzle piece and trying to figure out how they fit in and kind of responding in a custom way to that, I think is kind of what I'm hearing. It never was a one size fits all, Pranay, just like you said. It never really did work one way. It was two ways. I like to think of it as an invite. I like to invite them along on a journey and get them to opt in as well. And if their needs and desires are fulfilled as well as mine, we both win. So I'd like to. I see lots of comments here in the chat box. Thank you so much, Mohammed, Marcello, Ian. I'm loving this comment stream. I'd love to hear some other nuggets that you've heard so far from our panel. I'd like to do a little bit of a transition. I'd like to invite you to look at something, and that's specifically a graph. As part of what we do as a company, we take data and we visualize how people are feeling. So I'd like to bring up on screen a screen share that shows you some of what these graphs could look like. Because I'll tell you, growing up, when I went to school, in physics was actually one of my favorite classes, but it wasn't until we actually got into the lab to actually do the experiment where sometimes I had the aha moment. People could explain things on whiteboards and chalkboards all the time. I guess I'm kind of dating myself a little bit by saying chalkboards. But when I started to do the actual lab experiment is when I really got to see something. So I'd like to show you some results of what people look like and some of the responses to an assessment so we can kind of see where they are. Janine, do you mind bringing that up on screen and kind of making that full screen so we can all see this? And what you're looking at here first is a graph. And look at that circular portion here. You see it says more effective at the top with that A+. When you start to see, I'm presenting to you a graph that you're going to see in a second with individual people's responses. Anything that's blue is beautiful. So as you go bigger on the graph, the dots, those blue dots are on the outside. That's really good, that they're highly effective, that they're very strong at. When you get to the center where those dots are in the center, they're less effective. They're not feeling as strong. And there's that gray area in the background. That's how the average person feels in that organization that's been surveyed. So what we've done is we've actually started to survey people, a qualitative survey, to find out kind of where they are in their ability to create effectiveness within your organization. Janine, do you mind going to that next slide for me? And let's kind of zoom in there. I'd like to show people what this is. This is a person named Gregory. You can see up at the top here, it says employee objectives align with professional desires. And you can see that blue is on the far edge. So they agree with that. They build custom performance plans for employees, and they agree with that. You also see, as you kind of go around back counterclockwise, see I use data objectively to improve performance. I understand revenue and gross profit, understand my employees. I spend adequate time with each individual. They tend to do better on average. Where it looks like they're struggling a little bit or they're not doing so well is I routinely conduct employee performance effectiveness assessments. I'd like to go to my panel here. Dan, I'll start with you. You see a leader like this. Are they creating this safe environment for someone to work in?
Not necessarily. What they're doing is neglecting the potential of that employee. When you don't have and I would look at this leader as someone who needs better systems to manage their processes. So, hey, what are the systems you use to regularly schedule? Everybody's got a calendaring app. We can use that. But yeah, when you don't have regular reviews with your employees, you're creating a situation where they don't feel valued. Now, it's not every employee. Some employees are not driven by recognition and, mastery of their craft. Some people just want to show up, but what you really want to do is start having those conversations and say, hey, I want to every quarter meet with you and talk about what your role is in the organization. What role do you want to be doing in this organization? Let's talk about the steps from here to there. And every month, let's meet and we'll talk about, have you been achieving those steps? Therefore, you're putting a path in front of someone to give them a growth opportunity. And when you do that, that will build self-esteem, because every step they take along the way is a step towards growth and a step towards being a better version of themselves.
So I got some comments in here. Challenge me, encourage me to do better, achieve new heights. Curtis says, sorry, late to the party. If this was already suggested, no, Curtis, you're right on time, and timing was perfect for your statement. Ian says, we can't have a cookie cutter approach to managing our people, and our people recognize when we approach them as individuals, as part of the team. Dan, I think that almost says exactly what you're saying in approaching each individual.
I just want to address one that Marcello said down here. Please don't suggest that a barbecue is an excellent way to create a culture of trust. 100% agree with that. It's not a way to create a culture of trust. You know, we came out of the 90s where Google had this, you know, they built their campus where they had the free lunches and the futons and all of the nap pods and all of that stuff. And companies started doing that because that's what they thought people wanted, but really that was just a way to keep people at the office longer. That's not culture, that's perks. Culture is about how you do work and how you do work together, reducing friction in people's work, taking burden off of them, listening to the problems that they're having and making their lives easier. So to answer Marcello on this one, focus on the workflow, focus how work gets done, and make everybody's lives easier. That will affect your culture.
Yep.
I don't always want to keep prompting you all. So Brent, Pranay, I'd love to hear what's going through your minds as you think of them.
So I would think about Gregory. So take a step back. It seems like he's a pretty good employee, right? Everything's blue. So I would actually focus a good amount of the conversation on like what he's doing well, right? And that's how we build up his self-esteem. And obviously there's room for work, but maybe he hasn't been shown a good example. Maybe his boss or his CEO hasn't been doing the interviews. And a lot of times the best thing we can do for employees is to model good behavior. And so that's what I would take a step back, be like, hey, you're kicking butt. But there is, a little bit of room for improvement. So not that sandwich. It would be like 70 or 80% praise because he's doing the right things. And then just a small room for improvement, and model that by saying like, here's what I'm doing. It makes you feel good that I'm telling you you're kicking butt, right? And your employees are missing out on that. So to give him a reason as his boss or as the CEO, like why we're doing this.
Well,
so, Brent, I think you got a thought. I got a follow-up question for you after you go.
Okay. Well, when I'm looking at Gregory, as a leader who leads leaders, I would say right off the bat that he is missing the point of real leadership. And he was probably chosen because he was a great doer. And great doers don't always make great leaders. And so looking at just his scores here, it's telling me that he's not leading the business, he's doing the business. And that leads to burnout, that leads to inconsistencies. So it definitely is a point that we have to make sure and teach our leaders who lead others that leadership is about legacy. You have to be able to take people from where they are to where they need to be, and so that you're not the cog that holds the whole thing together. You are helping it. And I want to say one other thing before you ask your question. One of the things that if you want to talk about some practical things that I can definitely say about Rollins, is something we do, and I'm in the process of doing them right now. We do what's called a Your Voice Matters. And where I go into every single one of my branches, every single one of my locations, and I want to hear what the employees have to say. I get great ideas from that. And just doing those the last couple of months, I've gotten so many ideas that I sat down with my team and I told them, you know what? I'm hearing constantly these people want to know they're doing well, and they want to know the whys of the decisions being made. So instead of always them getting the filtered information, I took it upon myself to do something that we just had on Tuesday, yesterday morning, It's called the state of the region. You know, this country has a state of the country, right, where the president stands up and tells everybody what's happening. So I want them to know how we're doing and how their jobs are actually going to affect our financial obligations, our physical obligations, you know, and our growth obligations of the company. And I'll tell you, that went over like gangbusters in building the confidence and the self-esteem of my team and the managers' teams. I've got so many comments on doing that. And that's what helps people like Gregory become an effective leader, because now they're seeing that they're bringing people along. They're not just dragging them to do by doing chores or doing their job description, because that's what that won't keep them.
So I think I'm going to have to send you a $20 bill, because you kind of led this directly where I was going to ask you a question.
Okay.
And Janine, if I could get you to go sort of the next slide, before we introduce this next person, kind of what their sort of leadership fingerprint looks like, right? Brent, you mentioned this idea of the sort of the profitability and the financial motivations of an organization.
Mm-hmm.
I'll put you on the spot first here. So talk to me about how you can see this effectiveness that a leader creates this self-awareness for self-esteem for its people, and how that leads to that, how an organization is more effective in its financial performance. Is that a connection you can make there?
Oh, certainly. One of the things that I think my team could know right off the bat is, you know, when you're looking at a P&L, you teach people to read a P&L when they're at the branch manager, region manager level. But the first thing you teach them is every number has a person connected to it. And in order for that person to help you hit the number, because that's your financial responsibility, you have to teach them what a good day looks like, what a successful day looks like, what a successful career looks like, and how to become better at it. And so in teaching that, you show people how, you know, their daily task, which they look at as their job, really has a major impact in a almost $3 billion company. And that's how you connect a P&L number to the person. And then building their self-confidence by congratulating them each and every time they go above and beyond, and then show them. You have to also be looking ahead. And this is what I try my best to do, is look ahead at what gets them to the next level. Because if there's not a next level, you never challenge people to become better. If there's always a stagnant, just do this mundane task every day with no benefit from you. And one of the things I try to teach them is, in our business, you can do your same task in the same time, but also create more income for yourself by doing it better ways. Because one of the things that Rollins is good about is we don't do just pest control. We do pest control down to a science. So we think about what we do. We think about how we do it. And same thing with our P&L. Our chairman, our stockholders, yes, they want us to do financially better, but I think our focus, I'll say it like this: in order for us to be a world-class service provider, we've got to be a world-class employer first, and that's what we're trying to do here, and that's how we connect the P&L to the person. Sorry, I might have rambled a second on there.
No, I think that's useful for people to be able to connect those dots, because I think lots of people think of kind of this whole self-awareness and self-esteem as kind of squishy stuff. Well, let me say, I used to think that. I've made that shift in heart set or mindset myself, and then all of a sudden it's like a whole new door to a new level of performance opened up for me. So hopefully people don't struggle with it as long as I did. Janine, can you zoom in a little bit here? I'd like to show this graph, and I think you can already see from the shape, this individual is different than the person before, right? This person excels at areas like, can you zoom that in a little bit more for me, just so everyone can see that clearly on screen, right? I build custom performance plans for employees, kind of like around 1 or 2 o'clock. They do that well. I routinely conduct employee performance assessments, effectiveness assessments. I spend adequate time with each individual employee. Those are the places that they tend to be doing really well. Other place, let's see, employee objectives align with professional desires. I understand revenue and gross profit. I understand my employees. I use data to objectively improve performance. This is an assessment that we created. And Prim, if you don't mind dropping this into the comment, if anybody would like to take this assessment or give it to their team. It's a completely free assessment. You can get the same visualization yourself. Prim, if you can drop that in the comments so people can try that assessment out for themselves. Dan, Pranay, I'd love to hear your thoughts. You kind of looking at this person. Brent was talking a little bit about the financial side and how that ties in. I'd be kind of curious what's going through your mind as you're hearing all that.
So as a leader, really, you are the aggregate of your employees, right? So this seems to me someone that isn't really taking the time or effort to get to know who they work with. They're just a cog in the wheel. And that it's just a recipe for discontent, a recipe for getting your people to leave. Because these days you have to do more than just provide a good place to work. You have to provide people engagement. You have to provide them a reason to want to work at your place, because there's 10 other places that they can work at. We know that Rockstar employees have a full menu of places that they can work at. So this is a manager, much more than Gregory. This is someone that I would have to sit down and come up with a performance improvement plan. Like, hey, this is not how we treat our employees. This is not how we go about working, because in the long run, this person is going to cost us a lot of money.
Dan?
I'll keep going with that comments. And off of what Brent said earlier, after the pandemic, people realize that their lives are really valuable and they don't have to spend all their days in a cubicle somewhere under fluorescent lights. They will do what they need to do to live a more full and rich life. And if you're not providing that space for them, like a purpose in your cause and what you're doing, it's going to be harder to keep them. Also, talked about motivation. If you don't understand your employees and you don't understand their motivations, it's going to be really hard to have effective conversations with them. We have to be able to speak to them at a level that is actually going to hit their intrinsic motivators. Like, are they a curious person? Are they a challenge-driven person? Are they competitively driven? What do we really know about them so that we can have conversations that attaches them to the business so that they feel that connection, that relatedness, and that purpose for what we're doing. And the top two reasons people leave jobs: money, manager. And if your manager doesn't understand you, you're not sticking around.
Yeah. There's a phrase that I've been using for some time now, and the more I say it, the more I believe it, and I see it to be true, or I believe that it's true. And that is that emotions are sort of a window into the future for an individual. The more I understand the emotions of where they're sitting and how they're feeling in a situation, gives me greater visibility and greater resolution through my lenses as to how I can work with them. Dan, you're constantly working with leaders who are trying to shift their mindset or their heart set. Does that resonate with you? And kind of this individual here, as Pranay said, this person may have some miles to go before they're able to actually step to that next level of leadership. Any thoughts on that topic, Dan?
Yeah. I take it back. You were just talking about the emotional side of it all and recognizing those. I kind of look at it as there's a cycle that happens. It's frustration. It starts with frustration. Frustration leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate then leads to apathy, and then contempt. And when you get to contempt, it's over. They're not sticking around anymore. So having good conversations, understanding whether frustrations are first, can stop the dominoes from sliding down to contempt where they're ready to leave. So that's what it means to me.
Brent, Pranay?
Yeah, I saw someone mentioned the love languages. Totally agree. And in the sense that you need to create a framework, like figure out what appeals to this person. Like Dan was saying, motivations, what drives them, right? And once you're able to figure that out, then you're gonna just have so much of a happier employee. And you're right. There's, Dan makes it sound like there's a lot of steps, but you can go through those steps really quickly, and it could happen in a week. And you could potentially have your star employee go from frustration to contempt if things are just going really poorly. So it's really important to keep in mind. Plus, And we're talking about losing employees, but happy employees are more productive. So not only will you be able to keep this great talent, but they're actually going to be working better and in the long run help your bottom line.
So, Brent, I actually want to kind of throw a targeted sort of question at you. I mean, usually when things are complex and there's lots of steps, you lose this sort of the sanctity of the process in doing that. Do you feel, I mean, with the organization that you have, and I know you've got quite a few hundred people that kind of roll up to you, do you feel that this idea of creating self-esteem for employees or creating that space for self-esteem in your employees is a complicated process?
I don't think so. I think at Rollins, we take a real systematic approach that even while we are interviewing someone, we take time to use a tool similar to what you're using right now to understand the person, their motivations, understand what they will bring to the organization. And so it allows us as leaders to know how to lead them. And I've used that to say this saying to myself over and over, because sometimes, I forget to go back and read a certain person's, what we call a culture index. Same kind of situation what you're dealing with there. And I have to understand that data gives you a baseline to lead from, because without it, you're just directing from the moment. If you're direct from the moment, it can change based upon, if you had a good P&L or you had a bad review or you had a bad visit. But if you're leading from that baseline that you know how to drive that person to their success when they're happy, then you can understand how to handle and how to motivate that person. Looking at the gentleman you have there, I would say that, something I even heard from you when you talk about the heart over the mindset. I labeled it as simply this: that person had more heart than he had head, because he didn't want to. He wanted to be a servant leader, but he didn't understand in order to be a servant leader, you have to be able to pour some knowledge and understanding in your head. You have to lead from the front. That means you have to develop yourself. You have to invest in your craft. And, you're pulling people along, but you'll never pull their full potential simply because you're not there. You're not even trying to get there. And that's what I see in his graph. And so I would manage him to take time to, develop himself, and then along the way he'll develop others.
Interesting. So I always tell people, try to lift someone above your head when standing on two legs. That's tough enough. Now try to do it on a single leg. It's even much harder to do, because now you're starting to balance yourself. So I think what I heard from you, Brent, was this idea that, gosh, if you're going to be able to create self-esteem for others, you got to start with yourself, right? Because if you start with yourself, you have a firm foundation on which to help others. And I think we are so often, let me start talking about myself, so often trying to teach others how to do it when in fact I didn't know how to do it myself first. There was a link dropped into the comments there. You can do it for yourself. You can do it for your whole team if you'd like to. You can do it for your whole organization. It is a completely free assessment. If you go to that link, you can fill out the assessment, and shortly after that, you'll get one of my team members will just email that assessment so you can take a look at it and get a graph like this for yourself. And find out how you or your team members are doing. So you have this for your organization, for your own edification. I want to look at third graph here, just because I feel like sort of the diversity of graphs gives us the ability to take a look at different ones. Here's a different one, different shape. This looks almost like more of an almond shape. And if you look at this one, the left-hand side here says, I understand revenue and gross profit. I conduct routine performance experience surveys with my employees. Those are the areas where they're not as effective. How about one of the three of you? When you see this, I mean, completely different type of personality here. Where do you think this leader might need some coaching, some assistance, some visibility into their blind spots to become more effective? Any thoughts?
I think, back to the topic of building self-esteem, money is one of those things that if you don't understand it, it's going to be like a burden that you carry around. So if you're not understanding your revenue, that's going to be a problem. It's something that's going to just hang over you. That's a cloud that will just hang over you all of the time. So you have to dig in. You have to understand that. So that's where I see there.
So, and that's an important point. I don't know if Pranay, you're about to say something there, but a thing that I heard what you were saying, Brent, is this idea of data. You got to make decisions based on data, and your finances, gross profit, your profitability, all those things are data points. I think one of the biggest mistakes that I used to make as an individual is my perception was my reality, but perception is not reality. And I'm making based on sort of a recency bias. What I saw in the last 3 weeks, I'm making judgments for what I'm going to do for the next year based on those 3 weeks. Data will give you an objective, unbiased insight as to what actually happened, not what you believed happened. And for me, data is a place to start asking better questions as opposed to thinking I have knowledge. Pranay, I kind of jumped in, I think, as you were about to say something. Please continue with the thought. I'd love to hear what your reflections on that are.
Yeah, I mean, once again, we're seeing the routine performance evaluations. You just, like Brent was talking about earlier, like you just learn so much more by talking to the frontline people. And the more levels you're removed from that, the less of a feeling that you have about what's going on. So we've all heard about the Toyota management system, and they said, anyone, and especially people on the front line, they're able to stop the production process if they see something. And, don't let a 50-cent problem lead to a $5,000 problem. So the performance evaluations are not evaluations always in the sense that it's trying to performance improvement, right? It's trying to figure out what's going right, what's going wrong, and what is getting in their way. One of the best questions that I have is there anything I can remove or make your life easier? And all my employees love that question, because I'm really trying to put myself in their shoes to try to figure out, like, how can they become more efficient? And in the long run, that answer helps the bottom line and the business and me as well.
So I want to go to the couple of comments here real quick, and Brent, I want to come right back to you. I think Marcello's talked about this, implement the philosophies of the book called The Love Languages, just don't do the touching part. I think I agree with that. And Curtis says value pyramids are not just for accounts and clients anymore. We can use this tool to show our employees the value they bring to the team. So it's not just about empathy for your customers anymore and your accounts. It's empathy inwardly focused as well. Brent, how does that relate to what you were going to say? Or tell me, what was going through your mind?
Well, when I look at Alexander's chart here, I may look at it different than you guys do because I have a psychology background and dealing with people. This is, in my mind, this would probably be a new leader. His top score is that he spends a lot of time. He just needs refinement. He's trying on all cylinders. If you refine the amount of time he spends on the right thing, you would actually make this a really good leader. This is someone who's probably newly promoted and did a good job at his previous job. And now he is motivated to do well at this new job, but he just hasn't refined his processes yet. Because if you look at everything he's doing, he's struggling to get everything going because he's trying to do everything at once. And that also can backfire on us, because if we judge this new leader within the first 6 months to a year of a new position, what happens is you end up judging him on a snapshot of not his potential. And instead, we should refine him, have him show him how revenue works and how it impacts his well-being, his bonus, his growth of his employees. Show him how to do a good routine performance. I'll give you the short story. One of the things that my managers was doing when I first got here was they would do what we call scorecards, but they wouldn't explain to our individuals how they can make their scorecards better. They would conduct them as a thing to do and not a learning tool. And so if you show someone that can do a performance evaluation, how to use it as a tool to build your team, you now developed yourself a leader of leaders. And so that's what this new leader is probably struggling with. He doesn't know how to use it as a tool. He knows how to do it, but he doesn't know how to use it as a tool. And if you want to build a self-esteem with someone, show them there's a goal. There's a goal and they can reach it. And then, help them in the places where they're struggling just to make the time for it. But this person is a 98 on adequate time. He's spending a lot. He's probably at the office early and the last one to leave.
Yeah, you get
I,
promoted to your level of incompetence.
Good one.
The Peter principle. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's right. There's an analogy I use all the time when I'm talking to my kids. I talked about this idea of that my poor kids are already exposed to the stuff already. But talking about this idea of leadership is kind of like walking in a pool, right? You feel that pressure from the front, things pushing against you that you see right in front of you. But as you move more forcefully through the water, you feel that pressure on the front, but you create sort of vacuums behind you, create space behind you. And all those pool floats and toys and everything like that kind of just fall in behind you because you're creating that space for them. And leadership, I believe, is a lot like that. Whereas you move more forcefully as a leader, knowing what your desire and intention is and what you're trying to create, you invite the people to fall in just behind you and to kind of fill in that space behind you. I've seen a bunch of comments here, and I really do appreciate a lot of those comments. I think everything from the love languages and the value pyramids are great. I would love to hear from the audience other topics or other nuggets that they've heard throughout the course of this that kind of has really resonated with them, sort of take-home messages that they would, they're taking home for themselves or that they think others should hear. Please type that into the comments. We've got about 13 more minutes before we get to the end of this podcast. So I want to kind of start coming back and summarizing from y'all's point of view. Pranay, if you could tell me in the course of this conversation and some of those leadership styles that we saw from each one of these different people, what are, one, two, or three things that you kind of would take home as a message yourself?
Yeah, I think I really enjoyed hearing from Brent and kind of how he looks about, especially the new people that join, and really trying to make sure that they're aligned and trying to explain to them why that things are happening. And I completely agree that the P&L is directly tied to a certain person. And one issue Roland Frazier talked about this is like, be transparent, make a decision to be transparent about how money comes in and out of your business, because if you don't, people are going to assume. So I have a private equity company. People think we're just sitting on millions of dollars because we own $1 billion worth of real estate, but most of the money just goes back into the properties, and our investments are the way our money comes out is most of it goes to the investors until we sell the property. So we're actually not sitting on a ton of money, but because in the past we hadn't been as transparent about that, people would assume things, right? So explaining like, hey, here's how the money works. And I know you have that on the revenue part, but revenue, I find that a lot of people somewhat understand revenue, but not necessarily understand expenses. So yeah, you could have a revenue of a couple $1 million, but if your expenses are a couple $1 million, you might not actually be making that much money. So I think really talking to your employees of all levels and also showing them how their mission and what they do is directly tied to the business and what they're trying to do. Nothing is worse than doing something and having zero idea of if it's even relevant. And then three, trying to figure out how that is to the revenue cycle management, like how the company makes money, right? Because if the company stops making money, then everyone loses their job.
So a couple of things I heard, and I'm kind of distilling this a little bit, is that your personal why, if you can get that aligned with the company why, that's a win, because you're kind of getting up out of bed every day saying, I want to do this because it's something I believe in. It just so happens to be that I work at a place that also believes in something very similar. Brent, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I've had a lot of thoughts. I've heard some very good things from the other panelists and from you as well. But I'll kind of summarize it like this. If you want to build the self-esteem of people, I think you need to take the approach that I think I've tried to emulate in my career. There are steps to it, like Dan said about multi-layered steps. And I always look at it as, first you got to, whatever it is you're trying to drive to get done, like you have to be transparent by showing them how to do something. Whatever it is you're trying to lead them to, you've got to show them how to do it. Then you've got to do it with them. And until they get the trust that you're in it to grow them and not to just get something out of them, you can't leave them to do it. So that's the third step. First, show them how to do it with them, then leave them to do it. But then the last step, I think, in our self-esteem and building and growing our people, you've got to hold them accountable to what they've learned. And if you do that in those steps, in that manner, you will build people that really and truly, when they come into the business or come into your leadership, really don't understand the total holistic meaning behind their jobs or their careers. And once they're bought in by those steps, you begin to build something that goes beyond your leadership. And, years down the line, you'll have people calling and remembering what you did for them. So I certainly appreciated the comments that was made today, and certainly would take back some of the nuggets that was given to this panel, from this panel. So,
Dan?
Thanks for inviting me, Vinay. This has been great. I love hanging out with like-minded people, especially people who are in leadership roles or coach leadership roles. I've got a lot of stuff here. I'm just going to kind of stream of consciousness right back at you, all of this stuff that I've got. Understand your people, set them up for success, and then hold them accountable. That will actually build their self-esteem, because you are setting a pathway for success for them and asking them to walk it. And as if they're not walking it, you hold them accountable for that. The next is data without action. It's just noise. You've got to use the data to take steps to get better. If you're not doing that, you're wasting a lot of people's times. We've got this idea from the 20th century, this idea of Taylorism, where the manager is there to hold the stopwatch and time everybody. That's dead. We're in the 21st century post-pandemic world. If you're still timing people with a watch, they're not going to work for you. They don't want to work for you. They want autonomy. And the way you can really set up people for success is to set the parameters, explain why you need them to do something, give them the parameters and constraints for what needs to be done, set the expectations around that. And then you validate that they understand. First of all, give them a contingency plan if things fail, and then validate that they understand that. Read your notes back to me. Make sure that I've been clear, so that they are set up for success from the beginning. And then as they stack up successes, their self-esteem will go up, because they are working in an environment where they know they can be successful.
I like those comments. I want, in those kind of those summaries there. I want to kind of close out here with two comments. Curtis Floyd says, "Thank you all. The most important things are unique and different, and can be coached that way. Patience and constantly including employees on business goals and aspiration gets them to buy in." Gosh, that buy-in is so powerful. Getting that buy-in. Curtis Floyd, I know you do that really well. Michael says, "It's a great point regarding revenue and communication. It's relevant to almost everything someone does. If it's not communicated, individuals will make up a story which breeds toxicity." Yeah, if we're not all, I keep talking about the story of the mountain. I want to go to the top of Mount Everest. And if I can't tell people that I'm going to the top of Mount Everest, they're heading off in different directions. They're like, "Well, I started walking because you told me." Well, you're not walking in the right direction, because it's my fault, not theirs. I got to help them understand. And hey, we've got to do this in 4 days. Well, people can sign in or sign out. But when people opt in, that's when real power starts. So I want to, as we're kind of getting closer here, I want to take a moment to say thank you to all of those people who've commented. Curtis, Michael, Ian, a bunch of other, Blessing, Jawad, Janine. Fantastic. I loved all the comments here. I think it kind of really set the pace and the flow, and a lot of just set the right culture for this conversation. Brent, Dan, and Pranay. Gosh, I think I'm gonna have to go back and study this. It was about 10 hours worth of good content here to be teased apart and thought about individually, and be sure that our team will be doing that over the next couple of weeks and months here, pulling out these little nuggets and dropping them out on LinkedIn and YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok, so you can see these things and hopefully have some constant reminders from these three gentlemen as to how you can really up your game and create that self-esteem for people in your company. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm really excited that we had a chance to have this conversation.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.